The paper trembled in his hands as if it already knew the price of what was written on it, and the smell of disinfectant mixed with fear clung to his clothes while his heart beat like it was running out of time. Daniel Carter stood at the edge of a decision that no father should ever face, staring at a form that would trade a piece of his own body for a few more years of his child's life, and in that moment the world felt unbearably small, crushing him with a silence louder than any scream. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen when humanity chooses love over money, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who needs hope today, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this connect hearts across the world. Daniel had not always been this hollow-eyed man with worn shoes and a jacket that smelled faintly of hospital corridors. Years ago, he had been a hopeful husband and a new father, the kind who took too many photos and believed that hard work would always be enough. That belief cracked the night his wife died during childbirth, leaving behind a tiny baby boy named Ethan and a grief so heavy Daniel sometimes felt it might pull him into the ground. From that night on, life became a series of long days and longer nights, Daniel working 2 jobs, then 3, always counting bills, always calculating how to stretch love and money just enough so his son would never feel the absence of a mother or the weight of poverty. Ethan grew into a gentle child with bright eyes and a laugh that could undo the worst days, and Daniel lived for those moments when his son's small hand slipped into his own, trusting and warm. The diagnosis came quietly, like a thief that did not bother to hide. Ethan's kidneys were failing, the doctor explaining it with careful words and softened edges, but Daniel heard only the echo of a ticking clock. Treatments drained their savings within months, and the insurance that Daniel had fought to keep lapsed when he missed payments during a stretch of illness that cost him one of his jobs. Every morning after that, Daniel woke before sunrise, his mind racing with numbers, debts, and the unspoken terror that his son might not survive another year without a transplant. He smiled anyway, packing lunches, braiding hope into ordinary routines, refusing to let Ethan see the cracks spreading through his world. When the transplant list moved too slowly and the calls never came, desperation crept in like mold, quiet and persistent. Daniel read things late at night on his cracked phone screen, stories of people who had sold organs overseas, articles that warned of danger but also whispered promises of fast money. He told himself he would never consider it, then found himself memorizing details, calculating recovery times, imagining how much pain he could endure if it meant Ethan could run and breathe and grow old. The decision solidified one night when Ethan fell asleep clutching his chest, his breath shallow, his forehead hot with fever, and Daniel sat on the floor beside the bed, silently promising that no matter the cost, he would not bury his child. The building where the private medical broker operated was cold and efficient, all glass and polished floors, designed to feel trustworthy while asking the unthinkable. Daniel wore his cleanest shirt, the elbows thin from years of washing, and carried a folder with test results and identification, each step echoing his resolve and fear. He rehearsed explanations in his head, convincing himself this was temporary, that pain could be managed, that fathers were meant to sacrifice. He did not know that this building belonged to a healthcare conglomerate run by a woman whose life had taken a very different path, yet whose past was about to collide with his own. Victoria Hayes was known in business magazines as relentless, brilliant, and unreachable, the youngest CEO in the company's history. She had inherited nothing but expectations, clawing her way up through talent sharpened by loss. Years earlier, her own father had died waiting for a transplant that never came, and she had vowed that one day she would change the system that let money decide who lived and who died. That vow had made her rich and powerful, but it had also left her lonely, her days filled with meetings and numbers, her nights quiet and empty. On the morning Daniel arrived, Victoria happened to be visiting this branch unannounced, reviewing operations, her sharp attention catching details others missed. She noticed Daniel immediately, not because he stood out, but because he looked like he did not belong. There was a stillness to him, a restrained panic beneath the surface, and when she saw the form in his hands and the medical notes attached, recognition flared. She had seen this before, too many times, and it had always ended badly. Without fanfare or raised voices, she intervened, halting the process, asking to see the paperwork herself. Daniel expected judgment or rejection, but instead found himself ushered into a quiet office where the air felt heavier, charged with something he could not name. As Victoria read through the file, the clinical facts collided with the human story between the lines, and something in her fractured. This man was not reckless or greedy, he was cornered. The medical assessments showed he was a match, the financial calculations precise, the risk horrifyingly clear. When she looked up at him, she did not see a transaction but a mirror of her own father's helplessness, and the anger she had buried for years surged back to life. She made a decision that would shock her board, her lawyers, and even herself, because some moments demanded defiance rather than caution. Victoria tore the contract in half, the sound sharp and final, and slid a different document across the table, one that would change both their lives. Her offer was not framed as charity, because she knew pride and dignity mattered as much as survival. She proposed a legal marriage, one that would immediately make Ethan her dependent, granting him access to the best medical care under her insurance and influence, ensuring his place at the top of every transplant list. In return, she asked nothing financial, only that Daniel allow this strange alliance to exist, at least on paper, until Ethan was safe. The logic was cold and calculated, but beneath it pulsed a raw, personal need to finally save someone. Daniel's mind reeled, suspicion and disbelief tangling with fragile hope. He had expected pain, not salvation wrapped in scandal. He searched for hidden motives and found none that made sense, because this was not a deal born of profit but of shared loss. Agreeing felt like stepping off a cliff into fog, yet refusing meant returning to a path that ended in blood and regret. He signed with hands that still shook, not from fear of the unknown, but from the overwhelming relief of choosing life without destroying himself. The aftermath was swift and brutal. News leaked, rumors exploded, and Victoria's board threatened revolt, accusing her of madness and impropriety. Daniel retreated into the background, overwhelmed by attention and gratitude he did not know how to express, focusing entirely on Ethan, who was soon admitted into a private hospital wing that looked more like a hotel than a ward. The boy's eyes widened at the clean rooms and attentive nurses, his small body slowly responding to better care, and Daniel felt something unfamiliar stirring beneath the exhaustion, a cautious hope that dared to breathe. Living under the same roof was a condition of appearances, and so Daniel and Ethan moved into Victoria's vast, echoing home, a place that had never known the mess and noise of a child. At first, the distance between Daniel and Victoria felt formal and strained, two strangers bound by necessity. Yet life has a way of eroding walls through small, persistent moments. Victoria found herself adjusting her schedule to read reports near the living room instead of her office, listening to Ethan's laughter fill spaces that had always felt sterile. Daniel noticed how she softened around his son, her guarded expression easing when Ethan reached for her hand, and slowly, gratitude turned into respect. Ethan's health improved, his treatments finally consistent and effective, and the transplant came sooner than anyone expected. When the surgery succeeded, Daniel wept in a hospital chapel, the weight of months lifting all at once, leaving him hollowed and raw but alive. Victoria watched from a distance, understanding that this victory was as much his as it was hers, and something in her shifted permanently. Saving Ethan had not filled the void left by her father, but it had carved a new shape in her heart, one that welcomed connection instead of control. Time did what contracts could not, turning obligation into familiarity, then into something warmer and more dangerous. Daniel began to see Victoria not as a savior or a CEO, but as a woman who laughed quietly at old movies and carried scars behind her confidence. Victoria saw in Daniel a resilience that humbled her, a love so fierce it had nearly cost him his life, and she wondered when admiration had crossed into something she could no longer ignore. Their marriage, once a legal maneuver, grew roots in shared meals, late-night conversations, and the unspoken understanding of having faced darkness together. When the media storm faded and Ethan returned home, stronger and brighter, the question of ending the arrangement loomed like a shadow. Both knew they were free to walk away, to dissolve the contract and return to separate lives, yet neither rushed to do so. The truth had become complicated, layered with genuine care and a bond forged under pressure.